legend is, if we say his name 5 times while looking in the mirror, we could summon him.
Summon the Candyman.
Hell no.
This is quite the update to the Candyman legacy, and really special too, because this is the first time that Daniel Robitaille's story and the Candyman story is really being told through our lens with this Black creative team behind it. How do you feel like that changed and maybe informed how this Candyman story is told?
Having a Black creative team behind this allows us to make it our story and allows us to tell a tragic figure. We sort of remember him as a villain. History remembers his bad deeds. And this version of Candyman gives us a chance to take back his story and to present a character who was turned into a monster, you know, and we present a character who has a soul and someone who we can be empathetic towards. It's really a form of taking our narrative, our history, and our trauma and telling it back the way that we desire to tell it. You know, hopefully that's what the audiences, you know, get from this as well.
It's been really beautiful to be a part of the Candyman legacy, and especially with a character like William Burke, because he is an everyman. He is an ordinary citizen with an extraordinary tale. He is someone who has suffered a lot of the slings and arrows of his humanity, and he suffers with a lot of trauma. And he's someone who's really trying to do the work, I believe, in this community of amplifying all that has went down in this community and saying you cannot erase it by just tearing these buildings down. If you want us, want all of us, and that means you got to unpack our trauma too. You see him as a child, and he had this pure heart, but you see him witnessing the brutalization of another Black body as well, many others, the effect that it's had on him and the long-term effects that it's had on him and his community as well. So that's why I think he's such an important character in the canon of not only horror, but also with the Candyman legacy. And I had a great time, and I felt very blessed that Jordan Peele wrote this role specifically for me.
I think something that people talk about a lot in the Black community is how Black women hold it up, basically, and how a lot of the trauma that happens, like Black women don't get to really process and work through their trauma because they're too busy dealing with everyone else's. And that's sort of what I want to talk about with Brianna is that, you know, obviously her partner's having a really hard time, but she has her own trauma that we see in the film that she has never really dealt with. And the closer this legend of Candyman gets, the more it kind of keeps coming up and haunting her the way that Candyman, you know, haunts Cabrini Green.
Don't say his name.
Don't follow me. So that was something I really want to talk about because I see it and I've experienced it myself. And I thought that was a really important part of the love story.
Well, I know you mentioned that Jordan wrote this with you in mind, but then we also have the great Nia DaCosta. What was it about working with her that was so special?
She is one of the most elegant, intelligent, collaborative directors that I've worked with of late. I've been given the lion's share lately. I just worked with Janexa Bravo as well with Zola. And I think they share a sisterhood. And with women, especially Black women, once they were able to get to the line, they were ready and prepared for that and to seize the day for their opportunity. Because we know how difficult it is for a Black woman in this industry to get to that line to lead a film. And Nia led with so much grace and intelligence and humor. And it was just a really lovely time on set. We were just committed to what we're doing. It felt like we were making a very small film, to be very honest, because we were shooting locally, we were shooting on locations. Everything about it felt community-based. You know, it's a very large film, but it's very simple when it comes to its ideology and its questions that we're wrestling with in our culture. And so she guided it beautifully.
First, I had a conversation with Jordan. He said, hey, you know, I'm doing this thing, doing Candyman, and I want you to be a part of it, but I want you to talk to Nia, you know, because Nia was going to be at the helm of it. We didn't even talk about Candyman. We talked about filmmaking. We talked about drama school. We talked about acting. We talked about some of her favorite films. And she told me how she wanted to make the movie. She referenced The Fly, she referenced Rosemary's Baby and a couple of other films. And I said, oh, this woman has class and she has taste and she's really, really smart. She was somebody who I knew that I could entrust my talents with and that she would take care of me. And you know, that was definitely my experience from start to finish.
Well, what was the most complex part about playing Anthony
I think one of the most challenging things about this one was taking the story of Anthony's trauma and the history and the things that were happening to him, and knowing that a lot of times you can't really see trauma. Trauma doesn't really manifest on the outside. It manifests on the inside, mentally, with our changes in behavior or health or sleep patterns and things like that. Then the history of trauma, not necessarily Anthony's trauma, but lineages of trauma that landed in Anthony's lap, began to manifest on the outside of his body. And that was something that I carried with me throughout the performance, and how that allowed his physicality and his emotionality to change as the movie progressed.
Was this a lot of green screen, blue screen? And also, how does that compare to something that you're used to working with in like an Aquaman or maybe even Matrix?
Yeah, no, this one didn't have any green screen for me, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed being able to stay in the natural, real world for this as much as I could.
Does that mean there were bees that you were working with on this one? And if so, did you negotiate a bonus like Tony did for any bee stings?
Oh man, Tony was a smarter man than me with the sting bonus, but luckily I was safe throughout this. There were some crafty workarounds for our version of Candyman that kept me safe. I didn't have to get stung by any bees in this one.
But what about having Tony Todd as a part of this film?
I do appreciate everything that he did for the original series, and hopefully the job that we did with this one will make him proud and will leave audiences satisfied as well.
I did not get a chance to lay eyes on the dear Tony Todd. I would bow down to this man and his legendary presence, but I'm glad that he's a part of it, truly. It's just nice because I think it is legacy. Also, he's an actor I've admired for years as well. So we feel like we're on the shoulders of greatness, of great men and women who stood before us. And I'm glad that he's being amplified with this experience as well.
This is the first time that Candyman is really being helmed from, Black creatives. And I'm curious how this story being shown through our lens makes such a difference in what we're going to see on the screen with this one.
Well, especially when we're dealing with Black trauma, it is important, I think, to have all eyes from a Black perspective. And that means in every department. So you see, it's beautiful. I love seeing Tiana's dark skin and her hair in these thick locks and things like that. There's nothing codified for another audience. It's like, if you don't understand, you won't understand. But we're engaging you to say, go with us. Just like we go with you. When we go to your story in Ireland, we go to your story here. We don't have to, we're not making it for you. We're making it about our experience, and we're inviting you into the conversation. That's what I think is important about this. There's no dumbing anything down or saying that our audiences won't go with us or we have to code switch in some way. We're showing you our operating systems, and you just have to get on board and go on the ride with us. Yes, stories like that do matter. Our voices do matter, and the way we tell our stories matter. Trust us when we're helming these films.
That's when I saw the true face of fear.
It really feels like the Say My Name of the Candyman is really being used as a conversation about the movement and a conversation more about, what the Black experience is and how it relates to the Black men we've seen in real life killed in our community.
Well, the wildest thing is this, we shot this right up until everything started to get locked down in March of 2020, before our summer of racial reckoning. And so we were already starting to shout quietly, say her name, say his name. And then it reverberated even more so in the streets. And then at the end of this, now we're on the other side, hopefully coming out of this pandemic, but also, fires aren't burning in the street every day. But we know that these issues are really prevalent. And we have this film as an extraordinary examination of so much, of art, of commerce, of criticism, of racial reckoning, of Black trauma and pain, and how do we process it? And it's under the whole temple of horror, which is it's a great connective tissue, actually, way for us to examine this stuff together. Black, white, and other. Everyone can come together because everyone loves a good horror movie, but now you're actually going to walk away with a little bit more. It's just not the things that go bump in the night or someone hiding in the closet, but who was the questions of who is the monster? You know what I mean? How do we create the monster? What about our culture creates this? So I think that we can unpack a little bit more than we are used to with this horror film.